First of all, I really enjoy the series. I mean, there's so much about it that we can cover. I was just thinking we could talk for an hour and a half and still not touch upon, everything we'd like to discuss.
Thank you, man. I'm glad you really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, and when you started on the series, like when you first appeared, I was like, I like this guy. I hope we have more of him. And I didn't expect, I was thinking of one episode, maybe two, and then you landed on the couch for a while, and you've been there ever since. So it's been really great to watch the progression of your character.
I feel the same way. I thought I was going to be there for a short amount of time, and then I was very, very fortunate to learn that I had a little bit more to my job. So, just happy to be here.
So let's go to the beginning with this show's created by an all-star trio with Bill Lawrence, Jason Segel, and Brett Goldstein. How familiar were you with their work before auditioning? And when you got that call, what was that like?
So I'm going to say very, very familiar. Bill Lawrence is a legend, and Brett is like the prime example of like who writer actors want to be today. And Jason is the prime example of who writer actors have been wanting to be for the past like 15, 20 years. So yeah, I was very acquainted with all three of their work. And for me, I didn't actually get a call like, hey, do you want to do this? When you're like a nobody, you just get auditions and kind of hope that something is cool and hope that people like you. And when I got the audition for Shrinking, I remember reading the sides first, and then I called my friend up. I was like, I'm gonna need your help. He's like my comedic like actor friend. He's like a Latino Jack Black. His name is Esteban. And he's just really good at like getting a sense of who people are in comedy. I was like, I need your best Jason Segel as a therapist. I think I can get this part and I need your help. So we workshopped it for quite a bit, and we put together an audition tape, and they ended up liking it and called me in.
And then what was your first interaction with Bill and Brad and Jason? What was that like?
So it was all digital. I actually didn't meet them until after they had offered the part to me, which was weird, but it works. After if you and I were to sit here for a total of 3 hours, I'm sure we'd get to know each other pretty well, get to see each other's faces. So I thought it was weird at first because I didn't actually get to meet anyone in person, and that always felt like an important part of the process to me. But we do what we have to do in the situation with the environment and the circumstances that we were dealt. And I felt as though when I was doing my reads with Jason, that he was really present. Like it wasn't like, oh, this weird, awkward part of the job. He was, to me, it seemed as excited as I was to act, which I didn't expect from somebody of his caliber. You eventually kind of think, oh, maybe he gets kind of bored unless he's doing the real thing with the action and the cut. No, he was in it. And I think it really enhanced my performance as well. So I was impressed to meet him. And I finally got to meet Bill when we got to the table read. And I met Brett a couple months later after they finished with Lasso.
Yeah, your chemistry on screen is fantastic. So you would never know that it started off, in this kind of post-COVID world. It doesn't show at all. We'll get into that in a little bit more in a second, but I want to also, I was wondering, what about Sean when you read about the part? What made you want to play him?
I think the first thing was his distance from me. There's something about certain characters where as an actor, you kind of go, oh, I want to explore that. I want to explore what those emotions or what that character might look like on me with my tools. And I'm a very jubilant man. You'll rarely catch me without a smile. And then I'm reading this character, and his whole issue is anger. I was immediately drawn to it. Sometimes opposites attract. So I'm very used to wearing a smile, and then to play a guy where we rarely see him smile. And if we do, something big is happening inside of him. I was just immediately imagining all the things I could learn, not just with the amazing cast, but with the incredible words. So I was like, I gotta get this. I gotta convince these people that I'm the right guy for the job. It really lit a fire under me.
That's fantastic. And yeah, the words are tremendous. The not only the comedic aspect is fantastic, but then you get the dramatic, and it's just so many layers to these characters, and they come out through the comedy and through all these interactions that you wouldn't expect. Like I said, I didn't expect Sean to be there at all, and suddenly you've got this huge dynamic, this connection with everybody on the series, and everybody kind of helping each other out. Even, you're helping Alice out, Alice is helping you out, and it's incredible to watch, which is one of the things about the series that really clicked with me, especially the second time around when I watched it, is I was just amazed with how simple they made it look, but how much they really touch upon. When you first meet Sean, how has he changed since then? Like, by the end of the series, he's a slightly different guy. He's healed a little bit, but can you get into that somewhat?
I would agree. I think that's a great way to put it. If you line him up just visually, you can see a difference, because when we first see Sean, it was actually important to me. I didn't think that anyone would ask, but they were like, I had to do reshoots for another show, and the other show had me a little cleaner with like a high top fade and everything. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's going to work for this show. And then we called them, and my manager was like, they want to know what you want to do. I was like, okay, well, if they're going to ask me, I think he should look disheveled. I think he should look like he doesn't really care too much about his appearance. He's not taking care of himself. And that to me was important. And then towards the end, when he starts doing the work after that hard talk he has with Harrison, he's got a little bit of a lineup now. He's going in for job interviews. He taped up his beard. He looks a little crispier. He starts wearing things that are a bit more, professional. You see him in his green suit. And I just think that that's just the physical side. And internally, there was this whole shift that happened where he now has tools to deal with the guy he is. He can't change who he is, but he can change how much control he has over his actions, despite what his emotions are. And Jimmy's the one who's been equipping him with those tools, no matter how begrudgingly Sean has had to deal with learning how to use them. He now has them. And because of that, he looks different moving through the world.
And so, discussing the mental health aspect of the series, it's something that isn't touched upon all that much in entertainment, but starting to be more and more, grief and PTSD and all that. Have you heard from fans about your portrayal?
I have. And I got to say, a lot of their specific comments, even though they're geared towards me because I'm the one playing them, a lot of their praise is for the writers, because they're talking about how the portrayal is so accurate to what they believe is true in their experience. But usually that portrayal that they're talking about is the content of what Sean is saying, not how I'm moving or how I'm delivering it. The prime example I get is that moment where Sean meets Harrison's character for the first time, Paul, and when Jimmy tells Paul, hey, he's not going to open up. He's not going to open up. And then Paul said, hey, if you tell me, it's going to drive him crazy. And Sean kind of looks at him and he just tells him exactly what's going on. I saw so many people connect to that, be like, I won't open up for the life of me, but if it is to shame like any sort of authority, I'm going to do it in a heartbeat. And I was like, wow, the attention to detail that the writers had when they were creating this. And the fact that I get to portray it, the stakes are high. A vet is not somebody I want to take lightly, and it's not a specific experience that I'm portraying. But because the words are so good and that I've seen such a positive response, it makes me feel confident that as we continue with this story, that we'll be able to connect with that demographic even further.
But I think you need to give yourself some credit, because you can have amazing words. If I was doing it, people would say, man, that was the worst attempt at touching upon this subject ever. But you bring real life and passion to it. And your character, you could see some pain. That's the thing. Early on, you see this pain. And, I'm a father. So, you're a little old to be my son, but that's what I see it as, is, if your kid was hurting and you could see that, but he didn't know how to deal with it. So that doesn't just happen. So bravo to you for your performance.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, we'll chalk it up to a combo.
Yeah. Hey, it's teamwork. It's important.
Yeah. Teamwork. I love it.
Speaking of which, you have this great chemistry with Jimmy, Sean and Jimmy on screen. What was it like working with Jason And is there a lot of laughter? Is it like, what's it like on set to help create this, this great chemistry, this great natural emotion?
So I'm kind of new to comedy. I trained in it, but it's different when you actually have the job. My first comedy job was right before shrinking. And it was the only time I'd ever done it professionally. And it taught me a lot about improvisation, connection, and just paying attention to the fact that our characters don't necessarily think this is funny, but that's what allows the audience to laugh. But on shrinking, Jimmy is like, here's what's great about Jason. Jason is always funny, but he knows that Jimmy isn't always funny. And that he toes that line so beautifully. But because Jason is always funny, there are times when Jimmy is trying to make Sean laugh. And I'm not supposed to laugh, but it makes me break, And because I'm a little newer, I think I lucked out because my character's supposed to kind of after a while start to open up. So if you see the corners of my mouth turning up, I'm trying with all my might not to break. But truly, it does work for the Jimmy Sean relationship. So that chemistry that you're seeing there, it's just a testament to how committed Jason is to finding truth in his character. Because I truly believe that this dude isn't trying to just like get every laugh in the episode. He's going for truth. So he's always hilarious, but he knows that there are going to be times when Jimmy flops because Jimmy isn't Jason Segel. He's just played by him. He doesn't have all the comedy brilliance that he has. Sometimes he's going to miss, but Jason always hits it. So for me to just sit there and kind of absorb that, the reality of the fact that I'm kind of just such a big fan of Jason, and then I have to act like I'm not, and then he has to act like he's not funny, that's where the chemistry is. It's all these dynamics of us pretending to be these things that we're not while experiencing the reality of who we are. It just makes it so compelling to watch.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it, because I always try to understand the acting, how the process is, but you really nailed it, and it made me comprehend a little bit more. But also to hear, and I've heard from others that Jason's just a very generous scene partner, and that's that can only help. And it's great when you're newer to have somebody like that to offer and to help you grow. And it shows, like I said, it shows up on screen. So fantastic.
Yeah, dude's a giver. He's great.
I know you're a big movie fan. I heard you on Brett Goldstein's podcast. Look out!
Yeah,
it's only fields to be buried with. I messed it up. That'll try again.
Nice.
As a fan of a film, it must have been surreal hanging out with Harrison Ford. Were you a big fan growing up, and what was it like your time on set with him?
Okay, so there's this thing about nerves as a performer where you just kind of, at some point, you kind of just got to embrace them. But then you realize, like, there are certain moments in perhaps your career or in your life where you have the opportunity to meet an icon or a hero. And at least from my perspective, it was kind of like, you know what, this guy might ruin my impression of him. And he exceeded it. Dude is one of the warmest, nicest, funniest guys. And I really thought, I was like, just don't piss him off. I lucked out with Jason. I already got one hero who's just like everything I've anticipated and more. It's not going to happen twice. Not going to happen twice. Happens twice immediately. First conversation I had with the dude, he sort of like corrected me, I guess. And it was the most legendary experience of my life. Because Jason was asking me, he was like, "Hey, Harrison, what's it like flying planes, man? That's got to be pretty cool, huh?" It's like, "Yeah, it's all right." And then Jason was just kind of like, "Oh, it's Harrison." And I'm looking at Jason like, "Oh, it's Jason." And then I kind of poke my head out. I'm like, "Harrison, what do you mean like it's all right? Like, you're a G for that, right? You fly planes. Like, come on, man, that's gangster." And he goes, "G, huh?" I was like, he said, "OG." I said, "Well, excuse me." First
Awesome.
interaction with him. He's great. He's great.
And you have so many other, I don't have time to really dive into everything, but you have so many great relationships, and Sean's presence becomes, it extends from Jimmy to Alice to Gabby and so on, and Liz.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like working with this team, and which relationship on screen do you enjoy, interacting with, I guess?
So I usually work the most with Jimmy and Alice, and those relationships have become not necessarily comfortable because the dialogue always has some like richness or height to it, but I'm familiar with those relationships. The ones that I'm excited to explore further are Sean and Liz, of course. Want to see what's
Mhm.
going on with the food thing. And oh my gosh, I love Brian. Well, I'm obsessed with Michael, but I cannot wait to see because this dude, Sean, like, he doesn't really care about new friends from my perspective. But then he meets this dude who comes in and just saves his life. And then he's like, what? You're not even like that kind of lawyer. He's just, I feel like he has this great reverence for Brian, and I can't wait to explore that. And then, of course, anything with Ted McGinley, I will take. I cannot work with that guy enough. And finally, uh, Jessica was talking with Bill. She was like, we're going to need the Black people in the scene together. Bill was like, on it. And we got awesome episode 8. So if there's
Yeah.
any way for us to kind of come back into contact with each other for more shenanigans and hijinks, I'm all for it.
I do have to wrap up. I've got a couple more, try to make them quick. But funniest and most touching moment, and also if you have a touching moment, did you cry? Because this season, this series really hit me hard several times where I'm like, oh, I'm not the big emotional guy, but I became one while watching. So if you could touch upon those.
I think the funniest moment by far was the first, or I think it was the second day I was working with Michael Urie. Yeah, it was the second day. And we're out front outside of the like the court meeting room. And I'm standing there and we're doing the scene and everything. And Jason had been wearing his jumpsuit to work. And apparently he was like in his head about it. I saw him. He's one of the most, he's a Hollywood star. Bro's handsome. He can make anything look good. He's walking around in this jumpsuit. And then we see pull up in a golf cart. We see Harrison pull up and he steps out of a golf cart and he's wearing a pink jumpsuit. And then all of a sudden I see this Hollywood star who I'm standing next to, Jason, turn into me. He's like, oh my God, Harrison's over there in the corner. He's wearing a jumpsuit. And I was like, what's going on? He's wearing a jumpsuit. I wear a jumpsuit. We look over there. And then Jason's like, okay. Hey, Harrison, cool as a cucumber. I like your jumpsuit. And then Harrison's like, oh. And he starts acting like he hates it. And he like does this whole bit. And like the crew and everybody's cracking up. And then he gets in his golf cart and then he like drives kind of around and then we can't see him. And everybody's like in this applause. And he stops the golf cart in front of all of us. He goes like, and he peels off back to the trailer. And we're all like, what just happened? And then later on, Harrison's assistant, Jason, which is hilarious, asked Jason Segel, he was like, so did he wear that jumpsuit for you? And then Jason Segel said, I think he wore it at me. That was the funniest moment. And then the sweetest moment for me was Jason likes to cook as well. And he kept telling me how much he loves a sous vide. And then I kept telling him that I plan on getting one. So I would come back week after week after week, and he kept asking me, did you get your sous vide yet? And I kept being like, nah, man, I've been busy. I was kicking it with my wife, or I had an appointment or something, and I forgot. And until one day I show up, and there's a sous vide in my trailer. And I'm like, dog. And yeah, that made me cry. Because now every time I make somebody a steak, I'm like, yo, you got Marshall to thank, all right? You got forgetting Sarah Marshall to thank, all right? You know what I'm saying? It's Jason Segel out here.
You've got Gary from the Muppets, which is one of my favorite
All of
performances
them.
of his.
List all of oh, come on.
It's fantastic. All right, we'll close out a simple and fast one. 3 words to describe Sean.
3 words to describe Sean. I'll go at the end of season 1. He's angry. He's considerate. And now he's better.
Nice. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your great performance, because I really enjoyed watching it. And best of luck going forward.
Appreciate it. Great talking with you.
It's great talking to you as well. Have a nice one.
Take care, Steven.